Hi, Christina.
Hi, Susie. Thank you for having me on. And also thank you for having me be an Unplugged teacher all these years.
I really should be thanking you because you are a legend. People love
Thank
you,
you.
whether it is on the app, in the studio, or when we send people to you on via corporate
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
Everyone says the same thing. You make them feel good.
Thank you.
So
I
yeah,
love that.
this is really about
That's the mission.
the mission. But
It is.
not only that, you do it in a really cool way, like
Thank
shadow
you.
self and, listening to your body talk. And there's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so many interesting ways that you help people access themselves.
Yeah.
But what I really want to do is I want to start from the beginning. I
Okay.
really want to know you more.
Yeah.
Where did you come from? What did
Yeah.
you do before this? How did you become this? What are you
Yeah.
doing now? I want the whole story. So I'm going to
Okay,
mute
great.
myself and I would love for you to just share.
Share what I'm about. Okay. Well, the interesting thing in terms of meditation, what you had just asked me before we actually started rolling was like, I want to know where you came from. And I was like, oh, that's a great story. Because I was literally born into meditation. But I don't know if you know this. I don't think we've talked about it before, Susie, but I was born because of meditation, like actually because of it. So my mom had been a professional dancer on Broadway, and then she came out here to be in the film version of West Side Story. So she was in the original version of it on Broadway, and then came out to LA to be in the film. And then when she was out here, her boyfriend at the time was a musician and he was interested. There's this guy who had come over from India and was teaching something called transcendental meditation that a lot of the musicians here in the 60s and 70s were into. So he was a yogi called Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he did transcendental meditation, which people call TM, which is a mantra-based meditation. And so he like taught the Beatles and the Beach Boys. And so my mom's boyfriend at the time that she lived with was like, hey, why don't we go this weekend and check this thing out? And he didn't end up doing it, but my mom was like, this is for me. And she ended up becoming one of the original transcendental meditation teachers underneath Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And then, so she was one of his original teachers out here in LA. Now, they broke up, but my mom, kept the meditation practice up. And at a certain point, my father showed up at the TM Center in LA. So he had been learning TM. And what happens is that you have to get your practice checked when you're just starting out. So he came in to get his mantra checked and get his practice checked. And my mom was the practitioner. And he just like went crazy for her and then pursued her heavily for a year until she finally agreed to go out with him. And I was born because of meditation. So, and it's something that I've had in my life my whole life. So,
That
yeah.
is an unbelievable story. And for those
Yeah.
of you who don't know who the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is, he also is the teacher who taught the Beatles. So he is kind of the father of meditation, what a lot of people would say. He really brought meditation to the West.
Yes. So he was sort of the second wave. He came over from India to the West in the 60s and 70s and taught the Beatles and the Beach Boys. And then there also was the first wave, who was Paramahansa Yogananda, who came over in the 20s. And he sort of first brought it then. He's the guy who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, which I still think is one of the best books on meditation that's out there and sort of the history of it. And he's the one that started the Self-Realization Fellowship, which if you're in Los Angeles and you have not been to the Lake Shrine in Pacific Palisades, have you been, Susie?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
And his
yeah.
poster is everywhere on
Yeah.
Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah. So my dad also was a devotee of Paramahansa Yogananda, his form of meditation was called Kriya Yoga, which is a meditative yoga. And so I had all of those practices are things that I grew up with from the time I was born. So.
And what are they doing now?
Well, my father unfortunately has passed away, but it's he was on his journey and it was his time. And if we want to get really woo-woo, he literally still contacts me from the other side, so I know that he's okay. True thing. And my mother went on to become a film and TV costumer after she was a dancer. So I was raised on film sets my entire life. And now she's retired and she gardens and she still takes her ballet classes 3 times a week. And even in quarantine, she still gives herself her ballet classes. So
I love that.
yeah, pretty amazing.
So
And she still meditates. My mom still does her TM meditation
20 minutes
every
in the
day.
morning and 20
Yes,
minutes in.
yes, yes,
Wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah.
Did she give you your mantra?
She did. So I was raised, even though TM was the tradition that my mom did, and then my dad eventually sort of did a sort of hodgepodge of a bunch of different things. When I was small, I was raised more in mindfulness and presence and just focusing on the breath and calming my nervous system and, having some quiet time focused on that. And then once I was 16, my mom asked me if I wanted to be initiated into transcendental meditation and get my official mantra and have her lead me through the whole process because she didn't want to force that on me. She didn't want it to be just because she did it that I had to do it as well. She wanted it to be a choice. And so once I was 16, she felt that I was old enough to make that decision for myself. And then I said, yes, of course. And then, yeah, she gave me my mantra and then I've been meditating ever since. So, yeah.
And what type of what is your personal practice like now? So
Yeah.
are you still doing primarily mantra-based meditation? Because what you teach is a more creative,
Yep.
connective, guided visualization and
Yep.
self-inquiry. I guess that's how I would describe
Yes.
your class.
Yes. Yeah. 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 I think that's actually perfect. Thank you. I need to write that down later. um, yeah. So my practice has evolved and changed as I've evolved and changed and as I've learned more. So, once I learned my TM practice and then in my 20s, I really started just widening the scope and learning a bunch of different techniques and tools and just things that I was interested in and curious about. And so I have a lot of techniques in my toolbox now. And I'm at a point where I've been meditating so long that I don't have necessarily something that I do that's the same every single day. So what I can do is I sit down and I can sort of assess. I take stock of my mental, emotional, energetic environment. And I can kind of see what it is that I need that day. And it's almost like I bring out the tool, and the technique that I need to meet the energetic environment, if that makes sense. So, whether that's just mindfulness or just breath work, or if it's a mantra, if my mind's a little bit more racy, or if it's something is coming up emotionally and I need to go in and listen and do some self inquiry. Um, so it varies every day a little bit, but self inquiry has become one of the things that I sort of never miss. For me, it's essential. That's so much of the work that I do and I teach, the self love and the self care work. And for me, I need to make sure that I am tuning in and listening to those deeper parts of myself and getting the messages every single day, so that I'm aware of that so that I can function properly. Because otherwise, I don't function properly. you
One of
know?
my favorite things
Yeah.
that you have on the Unplug app is positive inventory.
Yes.
And it feels like you're describing a little bit
Yeah.
that
Yep.
where you kind of go in
Yeah.
and you appreciate what you are as
Yeah.
opposed to wanting what you're not. And I
Yes.
think that's something that everybody can actually really benefit from. Who
Yes.
are your teachers? Who are the teachers who inspire you the most?
Yeah. Well, in terms of people that everyone knows, I mean, the master for me is Eckhart Tolle. I think he's the one who shaped me the most. Not that I know him personally, but his work. Oh, my dog is really snoring. Can you hear that? Okay. Um, my dog is in my lap right now, everyone. My old man wanted to come visit. So the teachers who've inspired me the most is Eckhart Tolle for sure, because when I read The Power of Now and then A New Earth after that, it really actually changed how I moved and operated through the world and my daily life in a major, major way. And I mean, I had been meditating my whole life, so I knew a lot of this stuff in theory and I understood presence, but the way that he described it and so simply about why it is so essential to get into being in your life instead of thinking about it, because I have a tendency to, I'm a creative. I believe I have high intelligence, so I can get into my mind a lot. And also just, I think I was raised in LA, which is a very like go, go, go culture. And so, it was really essential for me to get that little bit of like, oh my gosh, how much time I spend thinking about my life instead of being in it. And also just giving yourself the permission for that. Because that's the only place where your life happens. And that's the only place where you have any agency and can take any action and can create and really receive the gifts and the miracles that want to come through. So Eckhart totally changed my life for sure.
What about the teachers that are not known, that are
Yeah.
living today, that you kind of feel slightly inspired by?
Yeah. Well, in my own life, I have to say that I've been blessed with having mentors, people that I just sort of know privately. I think being raised in LA, I had a lot of amazing women around me, because my mom was in TM and was sort of like an LA hippie. I had all these women around me growing up who were these amazing goddesses who really lived in more of the energetic world and really spoke that language. And they taught me that from a young age. I'm also highly intuitive. I mean, I think everyone's intuitive. It's just a matter of how tuned in you are. So I am highly intuitive, and I definitely do have psychic gifts. And so I was lucky enough to have mentors from an early age who were able to guide me in a way that was something to be not afraid of, and to figure out how to work with it in a healthy and balanced way. So my personal mentors, the women that I was raised around, I think for me were essential. And then in terms of like our teachers, I mean, we've got the best of the best, honestly, at Unplug, and which is why I'm so honored to be here. I mean, I wasn't like the exact first wave. I was like just after you guys opened, because I came in April 2015. And when did you guys open, Susie?
April 2014.
Okay, so a year in, I came in, and the wonderful Lena George brought me in. But the reason I've been with you guys for so long is because you guys are the best. You're the best, and we're surrounded by the best. So there's nowhere else that I would rather be.
I have to agree with that, because I do think that our teachers who teach at Unplug are just unbelievable. They're the most. I meditate with you guys every single day on the Unplug app. Like I wake up and I click the button, and I'm just doing something interesting every day. And I wish that for everyone, because I really feel like having access to a pro is so helpful when you just, some of us aren't as lucky to be able to sit with our mantra for 20 minutes a day and be able to do that. Because like for me, I have my mantra. It just isn't the style that I love. I love self-inquiry. I love guided visualization. And then I love just sitting in stillness and silence and noticing what comes up. That for me is my practice personally. But so that's why I love that we do have the mantra-based teachers. We do have the mindfulness-based stress reduction teachers. We have the guided visualization people. It's just, we have all these people. And by the way, I know you know Olivia Rosewood. Did you know that she helped Eckhart Tolle write his book and traveled around the world with him?
I knew that he was one of her mentors, and I love Olivia. She's very soothing to me, and just like a beautiful fairy beam of light person. I love her.
She is. And so do you, to be honest. So I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about what you're doing now, because when I think of you, of course, I'm like, this is the woman who helps keep me calm when I'm really stressed out. But you're also doing some fascinating things. I know you're in school, you're doing film, you're in the TP with Pamela. Like, what are you doing when you're not at Unplug?
Oh my gosh. When I'm not at Unplug, historically, before living through the pandemic, which while we're recording this, we're in the middle of the pandemic right now. But prior to this, I was doing everything. But in a way that was inspiring to me. I was really just trying to practice what I teach. So what I've been sort of what life has honed me into is this self-love and self-care work, which is really about self-listening. And one of the things that I always tell people is that you got to listen. The things that are knocking on your heart from the inside, you have to pay attention to those things. You have to listen to them. And it's not enough to just hear it. Then you've got to move your physical body and take the aligned supportive action for the things that want to come through you. I mean, I really believe that life itself is a creative process, and it's always changing and it's always evolving. And there's, your purpose is to be yourself fully and completely and express whatever it is that wants to come through and be created through you. And that is always evolving and changing. So what was coming up for me? So I was raised in the entertainment industry. I actually was never planning on becoming a meditation teacher. It's just something that was so much a part of my life. And then the world started to demand it of me, literally. That's how that happened, which we can get into later if you're more interested in that. But the world demanded that I become a meditation teacher. And I went, oh, okay, I'm going to listen to this input and I'll show up. But before that, I mean, I had been an actor when I was young. I did commercial acting and some modeling, and just because I was a kid in LA, and that's just sort of what you do. It's like soccer, you like go to auditions. But I was always a writer, always. And then I ended up, that really has become my main sort of sidetrack, is that I'm a writer. And so I've written for magazines, and I also write for film. And so I was always interested in that. And a couple of years ago, something was sort of knocking on my heart that said, hey, I really want to learn the technical side of filmmaking. I mean, I was raised on sets my whole life, so I understood that environment and how it all works. But something in me was like, I want to just hold a camera. I want to hoist it up and be able to film and know how to use all the dials and make it work. I want to operate, and I want to know how to set up all the lights and do all the tech stuff and, schlep cables and all that. So it was something that just came up in me, and I was like, well, I'm going to listen to this because it was loud. So I went back to school and I studied cinematography, and I loved it. And it just lit my whole soul up. And you can see my whole face goes when that's how something is great for you. And I loved it. And so I've been directing and shooting. And then I also, from that, went into photography and started creating visual art. And I had never used Photoshop in my life, but I started using Photoshop to create these visual art pieces. And so then this whole other part of me opened up that I didn't know before. And now I can really say, I'm also a visual artist. I create these really sort of beautiful celestial portraits and landscapes that people can hang on a wall. So I'm like,
where can we see that? Where can we see that?
You know what? It's so funny. I haven't built my art website yet, so it's been a little bit under wraps. But I will let you know, Susie.
Do you share it on Instagram at all, or have you shared anything like that?
I haven't. I've done them in little mini gallery settings, but I haven't posted anything on Instagram yet. Honestly, just because I want it to have a place where it lives all together. And so far, all of my friends who are artists are a little bit about posting your actual art on Instagram, because there's the whole thing about licensing and then they own it. So.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So when you talk, I mean, first of all, I just want to say, I think it's fascinating that you take classes and you find what lights you up.
Yeah.
And everyone should do that, because the truth is what keeps our brains healthy other than meditation is learning.
Yeah.
So constantly stimulating your mind is actually helping you strengthen your brain. A lot of people don't realize that. And they just get caught up in life or on their phones. And then they wake up and they're like, wait, what have I been doing for the last 5 years, or with their families? But it's very important to kind of dabble in things that inspire you. And it sounds like you've really been able to just get inspired in a lot of different levels.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I love being a teacher. And the exact opposite side of that coin is that I love being a student.
Mhm.
And the reason that I became a teacher is because I love to be a student. And I think of myself more like a student of life. I mean, I am just constantly curious and constantly amazed about what it just means to be a human being on planet Earth. I mean, if you really just sort of get out of the sort of everyday automatic way of living and not thinking about it, it's astounding. The fact that we're here, the fact that this planet exists, all of the things that are available to us. And so I'm just really inspired by being alive, and I'm constantly curious, and I just want to sort of learn everything. I think everything's fascinating. So I love learning. I'm a forever student.
I feel the exact same way. I feel so inspired, but sometimes when I think about just how big this situation is, how big life is,
Yeah.
it's almost overwhelming. Just looking at the
Yeah.
trees across the street and the fact
Yeah.
that they're cars and there's someone
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you really think about just
Yes.
and that even just inside of us, all of our organs and how they're all working, it can almost be too much. Um,
Yes.
which is why there's so much stimulation out there that it's important to kind of anchor in and access
Yes.
stillness and silence
Oh
within.
my gosh. Yes. 100%.
Keeps
But
us.
I also think it's interesting that as much as we know, and we've evolved so much, and we do know so much now with science and technology, I also kind of secretly love about life that actually no one knows. Like, as much as we think that we know, we also know nothing. We can't really just say this is what it is. Like, we don't actually really know. So,
Even your dog is like, that's true. Barking on
I
the tree.
know.
What is the one thing you wish you had known when you were starting off as a meditation teacher?
The thing that I wish I had known when I was starting off as a meditation teacher, honestly, is about taking care of myself as a teacher. Because I think that sometimes when you are holding energetic space for a lot of people, it's a lot of output. And I'm someone who's really energetically sensitive. I can kind of like feel everyone that's in the room. And even if we're on a Zoom call, I can kind of like feel that energy. And so uh, one of the things that I had to learn was how to really sort of manage my energy and be a safe and warm and welcoming space for all of these people coming through and doing their healing work, while also sort of maintaining that boundary, so that when I go out and I'm pouring so much out into people holding the space, that it's not something that becomes energetically draining to me. Because that is definitely, I think that a lot of teachers sometimes can sort of experience teacher burnout, where you're just giving so much of yourself, and then also not in balance with making sure that you are filling yourself back up. And especially at the beginning, when people get excited and they just like want to help everyone and heal everyone and save everyone. And then I think as you go on, you realize like, okay, I got to put all that energy out, but I also need to make sure that I'm consciously taking time and putting in my schedule to make sure that these are my times when I'm away from all other human beings and I'm just taking care of myself and nurturing myself and pouring back in and refilling. You got to refill the well.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. Camilla Sacred Dollar Up talks about that a lot as well.
Yeah.
And with David G in our teacher training program, we always tell our teachers that you can't be a good teacher if you're not meditating yourself.
Oh yeah.
And there are a
Oh
lot of teachers out there who actually are not meditating.
yep.
And you got to walk the walk. As
Yep.
Olivia Rosewood said, you got to walk the walk.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, Susie, because I actually would definitely second that and say that teaching meditation is not the same thing as meditating. And I think that
100%.
happens a lot with people where they're like, well, I'm meditating all day long. I'm like teaching all these classes. No, when you're teaching, you're using a different part of your brain. You're still in the doing, right? You're still in that active part. So it's not the same thing as you sitting and just getting quiet and getting still. So yeah.
100%. In fact, there is a teacher I remember in the very beginning of Unplug who would go into their own meditation. They would use that as their meditation. And I remember there was someone snoring to my right and someone like coughing and one person trying to get their attention. And I'm like trying to get this teacher's attention
Yeah.
and being totally ignored. And when you teach, I think the best advice really would be to have awareness because you are holding space for an entire room.
Yes. Yep.
So you have to go in and go out, go in and go out. That's
Yep.
the key to me,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. And also being able to like feel the room. I think that teaching meditation is a little bit like an energetic dance, right? Where it's like and it's a story. For me, at least in my classes, I feel like it's sort of this experience of storytelling as well, where you lay out the information and you put it out there and you let it rest and you let it assimilate and you let people get in, have that sort of sink in, and you just got to kind of feel your way through it. It's like listening to music, and you sort of know when the next beat is the more that you do it. So it's a little bit of an energetic dance, which I really enjoy because I'm a dancer. So
is there anything that ever happened at Unplug that was strange or unusual, or like what was one of your strangest experiences that ever happened at Unplug?
Well, one of my strangest experiences at Unplug was when we had a full-blown altercation right outside on the street. I don't know if you remember this, but there had been some people out on the street and they started getting into a major fight, like just screaming, and it actually got a little violent. And the police came and this whole thing, and it was going on right in the middle of my class, like my Sunday evening class for everyone. And I was in the middle of it, so I couldn't go outside and stop what was happening or figuring out. So I just actually incorporated it into the meditation. And I said, okay, I couldn't ignore it. So I said, okay, listen, this is what's going on right now. And we will make sure that everyone's safe, just so that everyone felt safe. The doors were locked. I mean, nothing was going to happen to us in there. But I said, we're going to just incorporate this. And this is right now, you guys are getting an amazing lesson in how to be a meditation ninja. Because if you can meditate through this right now, you can meditate through everything or anything. And the thing is that when these kind of things happen in life, I do embrace it when there's disruption and noise, because you can't control life. And that's one of the things that I always teach is like, you can sort of put yourself in a little bubble. And it's wonderful when we can do that with people at Unplug so they can get that practice. But when you're home, I guarantee you, every single time you sit down to meditate, the gardeners next door are going to come with the leaf blower, or someone's cutting down the tree, or your neighbor's working on their motorcycle. And you can't let that be an excuse to not show up for yourself and your practice and your own sanity. So they incorporated it in, and after the class, everyone came up to me and they were so proud of themselves, and like their eyes were shining. They were like, their shoulders were back a little bit bigger. They felt like they'd just been through something, and they were like, that was great, because they were like, if I can meditate through that, I can meditate through anything. And it actually gave them confidence.
Okay, that is the best story for so many reasons, primarily because it shows you that your ripple is massive. Had you decided to interrupt the meditation, walk outside, everybody would have had a bad experience. But instead, you chose to use it and help them have this be the life lesson that it probably was meant to be. And that's probably because you're intuitive. So, I mean, it's just so fascinating how much we've probably all changed since the opening of the studio to today. I remember sitting in the studio and hearing the cars go down Wilshire, and then when a siren came, it was almost like an assault. And I would be so upset for everybody inside the studio, worrying about their experience. And honestly, the meditators who have been meditating for a long time didn't even hear it. And the other meditators who had meditating for a short time were disrupted by the experience, but nobody took it as hard as I did. And as time went along, I started noticing it less, caring less, and just using it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, to use what we have
Yes.
around us.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there
I think
anything else you'd like to add, Christina?
Just that I'm really grateful for you. And you know what I do want to say? I mean, I know this podcast, you're supposed to be interviewing us, but I'm just going to say it because it's something that is always so true in my heart, is that I'm grateful to you, but I'm also always amazed by you. Because, people always ask like, oh, what can one person really do in the world? Can one person really make a difference? And you're always such an inspiration for me, because you're someone who had a problem, which was like, I want to learn how to meditate, and there's no studios that are only meditation, and that's what I want. And so you listened to yourself and your own need, and you said, oh, this doesn't exist, so I guess I'm just going to do it, even though that wasn't your background. And then you created the first ever meditation only studio, and look at the ripple effect that has had, and how many people's lives we have been able to change because you listened to that voice, the thing that was knocking on your heart inside. You listened to it, and then you took the action. And I just want to say thank you. And I've always just been amazed by you, and I'm really grateful. And I know that all of our students are. So,
well, I really appreciate that. And I always laugh because people are like, thank you so much, Susie. You don't even know what you've done, how you've changed my life, how I literally was going to commit suicide and now I'm not going to. Had things like that.
Yes.
And I always inside think, oh, it's not me. It's really, I take the credit for all of the teachers who are unbelievable and who believed in this enough to join me and change the world with me. And if it's not me, I feel almost like, I always laugh. With Camilla, I joked around and I said, I'm like the Eileen Ford, which was a modeling agency, where I'm like promoting all of these amazing human beings who are changing the world. And I feel lucky that I get to do that.
Yeah.
That you guys show up and give everyone 400%. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. And for anyone who's listening to this podcast, a couple things. One is, if you want to meditate with Christina, you can not only do it on the Unplug app, you can do it live, and we can create a private experience for you. You can meditate with her with your entire company, or you can check out her Instagram. What is your Instagram?
It is Christina_Huntington.
And your website?
Is ChristinaHuntingtonMeditation.com.
And is there anything else, any other way someone can get in touch with you if they want to connect direct?
I mean, through Unplug. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, follow her on Instagram and get inspired. Thank you so much for all that you do. You're amazing. And I'm going to end this podcast and go meditate with you on the Unplug app.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.
All right, bye.